Oh,
So what's
any other
next for you
part
then?
for me?
Yeah. Are you building something with all this research into this phenomena of Jordan Peterson? Like, are you getting a sense of some sort of cultural zeitgeist, or are you kind of subconsciously, if you're conscious of it, like building some sort of project out of this line of inquiry?
I'm just following it. I'm just doing what interests me. I think calling it research is really giving me too much credit. But I, this is going to make me sound like a religious zealot or something. But
Hmm.
when I first started getting into Peterson, I don't know if this was your experience as well, but the first between the first 2 months and the first 3 months, I was, you could say, like borderline obsessed with his
Hmm.
videos. With what he was saying, it was so interesting to me,
Hmm.
and I was like addicted to it.
Hmm.
And I finally understood why, in the Bible, I was raised on Bible stories about the stories of Jesus and the disciples packing up their lives and just, following Jesus around to see what he says next.
Hmm.
And going
Mm-hmm.
to these towns and sitting in the crowds and helping out Jesus with being his roadie basically.
Yeah.
And I really understood, like, if if I lived in Nazareth or wherever Jesus lived, and uh,
Hmm.
Jordan Peterson came around and started telling me to clean up my room, and if I listened to him for a few hours, I probably would be like, yeah, I'm going to follow this guy to the next town, see what he says next. Like that would be, I definitely
Effectively
be a
giving up
disciple
your
of
room so you don't have to clean it anymore by becoming
him. I'm going to
homeless.
clean up my backpack.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
yeah,
Hmm.
but that's it's really powerful. I think this stuff. I'm less obsessed now. I'm more
Yeah.
grounded, looking at other things and reading other people, and
Yeah.
just sort of checking out Jordan Peterson's stuff on the sidelines. Now I'm more obsessed with the backlash because
Yeah.
he's hit this point where there's a new article talking about why he's dangerous or why he's just nearly stupid.
Or he's
And
important. I mean, every 3 days there's a positive one on him.
oh, of course, yeah. I mean, I like the positive ones as well, but I'm fascinated with the
Hmm.
negative ones because
Yeah.
I don't understand why they care so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's just popular, and if he's
Hmm.
stupid, then who cares? Like, if he's nobody wrote articles about why how Breaking Bad was like how lots of young white men like Breaking Bad now.
Hmm.
Oh, young white men are watching Rick and Morty. Like, I nobody cares. It's fine. Like they can just like that if they want.
Hmm.
Like why does it matter if they like Jordan Peterson? Why does it matter that Jordan Peterson is
Hmm.
popular? If you
Mm-hmm.
don't like him, then just don't like him. If you don't like what he says, then you can argue against that, which is
Yeah.
fine. But Laurie Penny isn't doing that, and I see a lot of articles that aren't even arguing against his points. They're just arguing about
His
his.
character.
Oh, he's like full of mumbo jumbo, and he talks about the Bible all the time.
Yeah.
Like oh, by the way, none of what he says makes sense if like. It's just
Huh.
I don't understand it. Why they're going to such trouble, and I think
Yes.
it just
Yeah.
yeah.
No, they also end up insulting people by saying he's the stupid person's philosopher, right?
Mhm.
They're really vindictive.
Yeah, very snobby.
Yeah, very very elitist, very snobby, and I think that goes back again to the ability for him to resonate with people, and not necessarily. And I wonder about that. I think that your case, it's anecdotal for you. Like you got obsessed with him, and then he moved on to these other things. For me, I found him before he got embroiled in the big thing, and I just started going through his over the summer. I had a lot of free time, and I went through and he caused me to start looking at my life and kind of like really investigate my value system and my patterns of behavior, and instead of just worrying about them and running from them, to turn around and to face where I was.
Yeah.
So he sparked that in me, but he also started talking about things that I've been interested in for a very long time, and he was doing it right. He was doing mythology right. And secretly I'm like, okay, finally people are going to be interested in mythology, because that's all I really want to write is the stuff that, is there's that, there's hard science fiction, and there's high fantasy, but what I'm obsessed with is deep fantasy, like the Silmarillion, and the ancient Greek myths, like where all the really intense, powerful primary colors of the story painting set are. And he's giving people access to that now. I mean, he talks about Pinocchio every fucking time he talks, which is fine. I wish he'd get up beyond that, but that's.
I think he's taking a break from Pinocchio. He doesn't talk about it as much as he used to.
Not as much, but he still brings it up. He's got to. There's something's got to pop out of a belly of a well. Like
oh yeah, the whale is like. Yeah, I don't know if you watched. I watched Pinocchio again. I went back to it after Peterson kept going on about it. I'm like, what is this guy going on about? Like I remembered it from when I was a child watching it, but that whale, what do you call it, imagery, the whale scenes, they really are quite what do you call it, gruesome. They're very affecting. Yeah, they're not exactly like, obviously it's a children's film. They're not violent, but they're very
fierce.
What's the word? Impactful. They stick with you. I think yeah. And the kind of pathetic Geppetto goes a little bit. He gets a little bit soft when he's in the whale, and he doesn't want to leave, and he's too scared to leave. And Pinocchio, the child, his son, is now the one who says, "No, we have to leave. You can't just stay in the whale, you stupid old man. Like, you can't stay in it." Yeah, you should go back and watch it. It's great.
Have you been through a period of your life like that, where you were kind of like, you felt old and spent and at the end of your rope and just in the belly of the whale that swallowed you when you were younger?
I've been very blessed in my life, and I'm saying that I would knock on wood if I was superstitious, but I've been incredibly lucky in my life. And of course there's been the normal puberty years where it's a little bit awkward and bad things happening and personal relationships and trying to figure out all this stuff about emotional the emotions of the people around you and how much you're responsible for other people, doing that sort of thing. But I've had no real belly of the whale moments yet, and I'm just trying to Noah's Ark style prepare myself as best as possible for what I expect will be a difficult life to in the future, because what life is easy. There's got to be some difficulties in store for me that I'm just trying to prepare for.
That's
I don't know about you.
That's wise. No, I've
You're a bit older than me.
Maybe a bit. I don't know. Probably a bit more than a bit, but yeah, I've been in a few whales, and like when you were talking about the young boy comes to the old man and says, "Get off your rocker, we got to go." Like I had a moment where like I've done that with myself, like where a new idea comes along and rouses me from the monstrosity that was the old idea that I'm stuck in, and so the new idea becomes the new mode of transport into the next era. And it's just it's an interesting process to be stuck in that belly, and kind of looking at life through a bunch of fascia, and pulsing, writhing entrails and stuff like that, and then be woken up by that vital young boy, that Paglia. What's her name? Camille Paglia.
Camille Paglia.
Paglia, yeah. I've been going through her book, Sexual Personae, which is, I'm going to say this, and pardon me for saying this, but it's like somebody giving you a blowjob with mythology. It's just so freaking erotic and sensual. And plus I'm listening to it on audiobook, and it's just like she's talking about genitals and like one god going around. No, it's read by some British woman. She's just like pouring all this imagery over me. It's a very intense experience, but she talks about the beautiful boy in one passage. And just like the mythological aspect of the beautiful boy, or that young vitality, that kind of like in a sense, metaphorically, like this sperm that just has to go. It just has to go. It has to go forward, even if that forward's crooked and erratic and spastic and stochastic. It has to go, and it's naive and it's innocent. It could be completely destructive, self-destructive, or it doesn't care. It just like goes and just penetrates whatever it can penetrate. But when you ride that, or I ride that that part, and then I get old and tired, and I start to doubt myself, and I kind of look at myself and I feel bad and I feel guilty, and I'm like, I'm not that thing anymore, and I stop and I have to detach myself, and I go through a fallow period where I'm kind of pathetic, and maybe not even pathetic, but I'm certainly hollow, and I feel like I don't have a personality anymore, I don't have any vitality, and then that comes back. When I just go through that process. So it seems like a cycle.
Like, is this like, what is this, every day, every year? No. Like, how often do you go through these?
I mean, it depends. I think there's smaller cycles and they're bigger cycles, but probably every 6 to 12 months. Like I'm just getting through that kind of taking a break period where I started with this evergreen story, and I just did a video every 2 or 3 days, and then like when summer hit, I just got some information and I started looking at myself. I'm like, I'm not fresh. I'm not juicy anymore. I'm kind of parroting myself, and I can tell, I can hear that. And so I just kind of went through this period of like really doubting and distancing myself from myself. And now I feel alive again. I feel like, okay, let's get to work. I don't know what the work is yet. I mean, I have to make this freaking documentary, but looking for that new idea, I want to burn myself out again.
Yeah. It's good. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
This question of coming back to the article, and a lot of other people who've said that Jordan Peterson's audience are predominantly male, and Jordan Peterson says that could be just YouTube. But I actually do think there's something to this, kind of what you're talking about. Not exactly that, but I think men do go through, especially between sort of 20 and 30, this incredible growth in taking responsibility for their lives, and all of the stuff that Jordan Peterson talks about, that I think is really helpful advice. But I think it's especially really helpful advice for men of that age. I don't know if that's something you can speak to, but I feel like I don't know that many women, to be honest, and that's something I'd like to rectify, because I really do enjoy the company of women, but I don't think they like me as much as I like them. And
really.
I find it easy to make.
Is that what you think?
I find it easy to make friends with men, and since I work in a mostly male environment now, it's hard to meet women. But I have some female friends, and I really like talking with them. But I think the process of growing up is different for men and women, and that's not to say that it's necessarily easier for women. But I think Jordan Peterson and his obsession with the hero archetype and all this responsibility, that does help men a lot, and it's also good advice for women. But I think men are crying out for it at the moment. These men you're talking about, the ones that don't have any direction and they don't know which way, the sperm spastic directionless thing, it doesn't know which way to go, and I think young men, they need to get their teeth into something. They need something to be passionate about and to work towards, especially young men, but women as well. But that's something that, for instance, ISIS seems to harness in young men, to give them something to believe in and to work for and to die for. They're just. I
thought you were talking mythologically, but you're talking politically. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the Islamic State. I know you're supposed to call them Daesh, right? Because that's what they hate being called, apparently.
I don't know.
You've heard that?
They're closer to you than me. I'm very far away from them.
Apparently they like to be called ISIS, but if you want to really put up the middle finger to ISIS, you have to call them Daesh, Daesh, which means like to crush, but it's also an acronym for something else. I don't remember. Anyway, yes, I should have called them Daesh so that you wouldn't get confused with mythological ISIS. But yeah,
on kind of a similar vein, to go back to what I was saying about why I think these articles against Peterson they're disappointing, or like this sort of feminist critical theory stuff is disappointing. It's like, if you're jealous of the guy, why don't you provide a counter story? Why don't you resurrect, let's say, erect is the wrong word, resurrect some old, the feminine mythology. Like, where's the feminine mythology? If you really want to empower young women in the way that Jordan Peterson is empowering young men, like, tell them a story. What's the best story? And I wonder if necessarily and I brought this up, and you you did something amazing in our first talk, but I brought up how I thought that the feminine imagination is more novelistic, and that the emergence of the complexity of the female brain requires a larger format than the very distilled mythological form. So I wonder, like women read a lot of romance novels, so maybe the romance is somehow connects with the woman's mythological framework, and that's, if you want to excite a bunch of women, you write 50 Shades of Grey, but nobody's going, you don't see thousands and thousands of people writing these huge long articles against 50 Shades of Grey.
I think there are some, actually, to be honest. I mean, I think there are some articles talking about how 50 Shades of Grey is romanticizing abusive relationships and all of that sort of thing. It's not like there's no backlash, but I think, to be honest, feminism is the story that Laurie Penny and others are telling to women, and it is very compelling, unfortunately, this radical feminism of men against women and all sorts of, I think, pretty harmful messages. Although there is some good stuff in there, if I'm being honest, although that will upset a lot of my audience to say that. It's not completely bonkers, the idea of feminism. It's just that a lot of it, the stories that they're telling, they're unfortunately, I think, not accurate, and they're dangerous, but it is compelling. That is the counter argument that feminists are putting forward at the moment.
And do you think it's fair to call that the victim narrative? Would that be fair to call it that, or it's a victim narrative? Yeah, it's one of them, and I wish it was a bit more of a inspiring hero narrative, rather than just the first half of the story with the victim and the downtrodden, Oliver Twist or something. I wish it would. Gables. Yeah, sure, I haven't read that one, but I wish there was a rise, a Batman Begins of feminism, something for women to look up to and aspire to. Yeah, and maybe that is 50 Shades of Grey. I hope not. I hope women can aspire to more than just marrying a billionaire. Yeah, yeah. That probably goes into some very deep-seated or seated biological influences when you get into, I want to marry a millionaire and please him sexually and get a little bit of roughed around, but I will always be contained within his uber womb of fancy cars and high-rise glass and win his eternal devotion. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the problem with the victim narrative, is that if you stake your political power on promulgating the victim narrative, then you don't want to tell the full cycle of the narrative, right? And the victim conquers or overcomes the problem, and then either becomes a ruler or kind of goes through a period of death and rebirth, right? So either you get in charge and everything's great, or you fail and you have to try again, right? But if your whole political narrative is to sink in and to tell that juicy part of the story that you're oppressed, you are oppressed, you're oppressed because of this part of you, you're oppressed because of that part of you, people will start listening to you, and you can get addicted to that attention. But if you start to tell people how to stop being oppressed, you're going to lose all that attention you gained, right? You're going to lose your audience because you're going to give them the tools to go on their way. Which I think Jordan Peterson, I'm going to give him big props for. I think that he wants people to go forth from him. I don't think he wants people to stay on him. That's not the sense that I get, and I think that comes from his being a therapist. I'm here to get you to not need me anymore. A good doctor doesn't want to see you ever again. Yeah, after he's done with you. Exactly. And I don't think feminism is a good doctor. Yeah, I don't think it's a good doctor. The great mother. I wonder if Jordan Peterson is, because although he's as interesting as he is and as wise as he is, he's human after all, and he must be enjoying his fame to some extent. Oh yeah. Oh man. Yeah, who wouldn't? Having the attention of so many people and having a book tour, and to receive that constant positive reinforcement he gets from the people who tell him that he's changed their lives, that must make him feel good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just hope that, it might help him take the criticism that he receives and allow the criticism to kind of stabilize him. But unfortunately, the criticism like this piece it's not even beneficial. It doesn't tell him what he could be doing better. Maybe there's something that he could learn to refine himself. And I see him refining himself. That's also why I trust him, because I see him making mistakes, refining himself, changing his behavior for the better. But yeah, I mean, people on my channel, every once in a while, somebody was like, you're going to have like 100,000 subscribers or whatever. I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I want 24,000, but the more attention I get, like I'm worried about how rickety it gets. Like the higher and higher you get, like the more likely it is people.
I think Laurie Penny's gonna write a 5,000 word article about you one day.
Yeah, I wonder. Like, you know what? I think about that when I'm tweeting right now. Like I'll do these tweets and I'll think of a good idea. I'm like, okay, at some point, if I do get big, people are going to be going through my stuff. So I need to be careful. Yeah. I need to be careful, So it might happen, but like it's not. That's not the same feeling as when I was 25 and dreaming in my head of receiving an award for writing like the best book in the world. Like having these fantasies of people like coming up and asking me, well, why did you write this? And what were you meaning and all this stuff, like that fantasy is different than like, okay, I'm getting bigger, but I need to build this thing smartly. It's more constructive and less imaginary. And maybe that has something to do with where I am at life and the amount of whale belliness I've experienced has tempered me.